The hammer struck the final nail, and Marcus stepped back to admire what had seemed impossible months ago. A beautiful mountain cabin where only rotting timber and broken dreams once stood. As he watched his faithful German shepherd, Rex, bound through the snow toward their warm, glowing home, he could hardly believe he was the same broken man who had arrived with nothing but a backpack and a heart full of despair. The transformation wasn't just in the house. It was in him. Yet the journey to this moment had tested every fiber of his being, and there were times when even Rex's unwavering loyalty was barely enough to keep him from the edge of surrender. Before we carry on, please hit the subscribe button to make my day, and let me know where you are watching from in the comments. Marcus Whitmore had once been the kind of man other men envied. At 38, he owned a thriving construction company in Denver, drove a BMW, and lived in a house featured in architectural magazines. His wife, Sarah, was a successful real estate agent, and they seemed to have it all. But Marcus would learn that success could crumble faster than poorly mixed concrete. It started with a single contract gone wrong. A luxury resort project in Aspen, meant to be his company's crowning achievement, became its funeral pyre. When the investor pulled out, citing fabricated financial difficulties, Marcus was left holding contracts with dozens of subcontractors. He had leveraged everything: his house, his equipment, even borrowed against Sarah's business, believing the investor's promises. The lawsuits came like an avalanche. Workers filed liens, suppliers demanded payment, and the bank called in its loans. Within 6 months, Whitmore Construction was a bankrupt shell, and Marcus was a defendant in 17 civil suits. Sarah tried to be supportive at first, attending lawyer meetings and mortgaging her properties to help. But as the months dragged on, the strain became unbearable. The confident, successful man she had married was gone, replaced by a broken man staring at bankruptcy papers. The final blow came on a Tuesday in October. Marcus woke to find Sarah's side of the bed empty and a note on the kitchen counter. She had filed for divorce and was moving to California, unable to watch him destroy himself. She was taking her car, her clothes, and her half of their remaining funds. The house would be foreclosed on in 30 days. Marcus read the note 3 times before the words sank in. He looked down at Rex, his 3-year-old German shepherd, who watched him with intelligent brown eyes that seemed to understand everything. "Well, boy," Marcus said, his voice cracking, "looks like it's just you and me now." Rex's tail gave a single, tentative wag. The foreclosure happened on schedule. Marcus watched from across the street as notices were posted on the door of his home of 8 years. Everything he owned was either sold or packed into the back of his pickup truck, the only vehicle the court let him keep. Work in construction was impossible to find. His reputation was destroyed. Even old friends seemed nervous around him, as if financial failure were contagious. For 3 weeks, Marcus and Rex lived out of the truck, moving between cheap motels, surviving on fast food. He was too ashamed to call his successful siblings and admit he'd lost everything. One desperate night, parked at a rest stop in the Colorado mountains, Marcus remembered something his grandfather, a prospector in the 1940s, used to say. He spoke of abandoned mining camps scattered throughout the Rockies, remote places where a man could disappear and think. This memory sparked a flicker of hope. After hours of online research, he found a place called Silverton Ridge, about 60 miles from Denver. A 1952 survey mentioned several structures on national forest land, accessible by a rough dirt road. He looked at Rex, sleeping peacefully in the passenger seat. "What do you think, boy?" Want to see what's up on that mountain? Rex yawned and went back to sleep. Marcus took that as a yes. The drive to Silverton Ridge took most of the next day. The paved road gave way to a dirt track that wound steadily upward. Rex seemed to enjoy the adventure, his head out the window, sniffing the crisp mountain air. The old mining camp was mostly ruins, but at the far end, a single cabin was still standing. The roof sagged, windows were broken, and the porch had collapsed, but the log structure was solid. Marcus parked the truck, and Rex bounded out to explore. The cabin sat on a small rise overlooking a meadow, with a breathtaking view of snow-capped peaks beyond. But it was the silence that struck Marcus. After months of roadside motels, the profound quiet was almost overwhelming. He assessed the cabin with a professional eye. The stone foundation was solid, the log walls were sound, but the roof was the biggest problem. It would take a lot of work, but Marcus had the skills, the time, and the desperate need for a project to give his life meaning again. That first night, they slept in the truck. Staring up at a canopy of brilliant stars, Marcus felt the constant anxiety that had plagued him begin to ease. Maybe living in a ruined cabin was crazy, but maybe it was exactly what he needed. The next morning dawned clear and cold. Marcus made coffee on his camp stove and planned his approach. The roof was the priority, followed by sealing the walls. He had tools and enough money for basic materials if he was careful. He drove down to a hardware store in a small town 30 miles away. The owner, a grizzled man named Pete, was curious about his project. "Silverton Ridge, eh?" Pete said. "Haven't had anybody up there in years." "It's remote." Marcus learned that cell service was spotty and help was a long way off. The isolation that once would have terrified him now sounded like a blessing. Installing the new roof took 3 days of hard, physical labor from sunrise to sunset. It felt good to use his hands again, to solve tangible problems. Rex was a constant, helpful companion. With the physical work and clean mountain air, Marcus began to look healthy again, rebuilding lost muscle and regaining a forgotten vitality. But the mental transformation was even more profound. The constant anxiety faded, replaced by a sense of calm. The bankruptcy that had seemed like the end of the world now felt like something that had happened to someone else. It wasn't an easy transition. There were days when the isolation felt crushing, and nights when he wondered if he was just giving up. A bear taught him a hard lesson about wilderness living when it destroyed his food shed, forcing him to invest in proper bear-proof storage and learn about coexisting with wildlife. As winter deepened, he learned to read the stories in the tracks left by deer, elk, and rabbits. The long winter nights gave him time for reflection. He started a journal, processing his past, analyzing his failed marriage to Sarah, and understanding how much of his identity had been tied to his business success. He realized his relationship with Sarah had been built more on shared ambition than genuine love. When the success vanished, there was nothing left. By December, the ruin had become a comfortable home. He had installed windows, built a small kitchen, and even rigged up a shower. A severe ice storm in late winter tested his self-reliance, cutting him off from the outside world for nearly a week. The road was blocked by a fallen tree, and his solar panels were damaged, leaving him without electricity. He and Rex lived by candlelight, melting snow for water and carefully managing their firewood. The dog's steady presence was a psychological anchor. During that enforced solitude, Marcus realized he didn't want to leave. He was exactly where he wanted to be. His first visitor was Dorothy Hansen, a retired park ranger in her 60s who stumbled upon his cabin while snowshoeing. She was amazed at the work he had done. Most folks can't handle the isolation, she said, sharing stories of the mountain's history over coffee. Her visit was significant. Her approval made him feel like he was part of a tradition, not just a refugee from civilization. Before she left, she gave him a radio frequency for the ranger station in case of a real emergency. Spring arrived gloriously, melting the snow and bringing wildflowers to the meadow. During one of his explorations, Marcus found the remains of an older, more extensive mining operation. On a large boulder near a mine entrance, he saw carvings, including one that read, J. Hansen, 1947, found what I was looking for. Marcus wondered what the man had been searching for. He thought about his own journey, realizing he too had been searching for something. He took out his pocket knife and carved his own message below it. Emma Whitmore, 2024. Still looking. As he hiked back to the cabin, he was struck by a powerful realization. He was genuinely happy. The bankruptcy and divorce no longer felt like failures, but like necessary, liberating experiences that had stripped his life down to what was essential: meaningful work, a connection to nature, and the companionship of a loyal friend. That summer, a magazine article about his life brought more visitors. He enjoyed the interactions, especially with a woman named Elena Rodriguez. She was in her 40s, going through her own difficult divorce, and was captivated by the peace of his mountain home. I can't remember the last time I felt this relaxed, she said. Their conversation continued through letters after she returned to Denver. Her journey to find a new, simpler life in a small mountain town made Marcus realize how much he had changed. He was no longer consumed by his own problems, but was capable of genuine concern for others. The mountain had taught him compassion. As his second winter approached, Marcus knew this was no longer an experiment. He was building a new life. He was no longer hiding, but living with purpose. Rex, his true partner in mountain life, was always by his side. That winter, he began working on a detailed manual about living self-sufficiently, covering everything from practical skills to the psychological challenges of isolation. He wanted his struggles and discoveries to have meaning beyond his own experience. In the spring, he used his small savings to purchase the mining claim for his cabin site, making it officially his home. The process connected him with a wider community of people who had chosen alternative lifestyles, and he realized he was not alone. As his third year on the mountain progressed, an idea began to form. What if he could create a place where people could experience mountain living without making the full commitment he had? He could offer workshops and retreats, teaching practical skills and providing the benefits of wilderness immersion. He developed plans for what he called the Mountain Skills Institute. The old mining camp had several sites where additional cabins could be built with minimal environmental impact. Elena was enthusiastic when he shared his plans. A place like this could be life-changing for them, she told him, referring to the many people who felt unfulfilled by conventional success. The first major hurdle was regulatory. To his surprise, the officials he dealt with were familiar with his story and saw him as a proponent of sustainable living. The permit process took nearly a year, during which he refined his manual into a book-length manuscript and built relationships with others in the alternative living community. As his fourth year on the mountain began, Marcus received official approval. He could build 3 additional cabins and host small groups for educational programs. The first teaching cabin was built that spring, with the help of volunteers like Elena, who had been inspired by his story. This time, he wasn't working in desperation, but as part of a community with a shared vision. By midsummer, he was ready for his first workshop. The group of 8 included a burned-out lawyer, a recently divorced teacher, and a young couple planning an off-grid home. Marcus discovered he was a natural teacher, but Rex proved to be the program's secret weapon. The dog's calm, content presence was a powerful example of a stress-free life, and students found themselves relaxing in his peaceful energy. The workshop was a huge success, and soon the institute was booked solid. Marcus hired Elena to help manage the administrative side, and she relocated permanently to a nearby town. The institute became financially self-sustaining, providing Marcus with a modest living and a sense of purpose that complemented his solitude. 3 years after arriving as a broken man, he had built a life. His cabin was a showcase of sustainable living, and he himself was healthy, confident, and at peace. He was no longer a hermit hiding from the world, but a man who had consciously chosen a different path. On a perfect September morning in his 4th year on the mountain, Marcus stood on his porch with Rex, watching the sunrise. In the distance, an airplane's contrail stretched across the sky. He thought of the people inside, rushing from one place to another, and felt no envy. He had been looking for a place to hide, but had found a place to live. He had been running from failure but had discovered a success measured by entirely different standards. That afternoon, a new group was arriving, people looking for alternatives to the conventional definition of success. He smiled, thinking of the transformations he would witness. The sound of the airplane faded, leaving the eternal silence of the mountains. The broken man who had arrived 4 years ago was gone, replaced by someone who understood that sometimes losing everything is the only way to discover what you truly need. He had found a wealth that couldn't be lost, security that didn't depend on others, and success measured not in dollars, but in the simple satisfaction of a life well lived. The bankruptcy and abandonment that had once seemed like the end had actually been the beginning of the most meaningful chapter of his life. He now understood that sometimes you have to lose your way completely to find the path meant for you all along. Rex stretched and yawned, ready for another day. Marcus looked at his faithful companion and smiled, knowing that whatever came, they would face it together in the place they both called home.